Are NFTs dead?
Why is community so important? And then I started realizing it's important because it's going to disrupt all the markets. It's going to disrupt a lot of the way we're building businesses right now. I watched a Discord grow from 20,000, which was gigantic at the time, to 250,000, I believe was like the total number. The founders that are going to succeed are the ones that have the ability to communicate, have a pulse on what's happening while they're able to go out and build their product.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Nalikes Podcast. I'm Talha Asif, and in each episode, we bring you insightful conversations with the founders and builders who are shaping the future of Web3. Our goal here is to educate and inspire the founders while showcasing what other successful founders are doing for their projects and startups in the space. Make sure you watch till the end as you learn practical and actionable steps that you can apply to your projects today. Today's guest is Mason. Welcome, Mason. How are you, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I think one of our mutual connections, PLA, shout out to him, connected us. We had a call last week and now we are here. As I shared earlier with you, that the reason I did this podcast was that I work with a lot of founders and I saw this problem where some founders had experience with product. They had no clue about distribution. They had, some insights on fundraising, but they had no clue about this thing. So there's this information fragmentation that I saw. And then that's when I decided that, okay, I'm going to do this thing where I can bring on people such as yourself who have expertise and skills in one particular area that can be helpful with that. So in today's episode, that's what we'll be talking about and how your experience, your skills can be shared with other founders so they can, achieve success in their startups. But before we do that, Mason, I want to learn more about your background. Who are you?
Oh, loaded question. Well, again, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. Who am I? I have been someone that has just done many things over the course of my life. I originally went to school for screenwriting, ended up becoming more in the producing realm, made my way into Hollywood. I did more logistics in Hollywood than creative, which was ironic because I went there to be creative. And then made my way back kind of home. I'm from New York originally, made my way back from LA home, and Hollywood found me regardless. And I ended up somehow still working in kind of the creative production element of things. And then I kind of found Web3 and I got really obsessed with it. I felt like the idea of community, the idea of people being able to build together all around the world, create businesses, create products, solve problems. I was just fascinated by what the potential was. And I kind of just shifted my outlook on life a little bit when I found that. And so I kind of decided, all right, what are my skills? What can I bring to the table? How much further do I need to develop that? And then I just kind of have spent the last three years in this space trying to do just that.
Amazing. I think community, that's the word that comes up a lot. Very interesting. So do share how exactly did you get into this space? And I want to touch on the project that you started with, Undead, because your journey is kind of interesting because normally the people that I interview on this podcast, they've been founders previously and eventually they come into space and become a founder or they're an investor and they become, but in your case, the little bit of information I have is that you were a part of a community and then you kind of took lead of that project and that's how you got your start. So do share more about Undead and how was that journey? Because just before you answer that question, there are many people out there who are in a similar position where they are part of a community, but they don't know how to navigate through that. So do share your experience so other people in similar situations can also navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things is really understanding like why community is important. And so for me, I spent 14, 15 years in LA building an IRL community around me. My friends were everything. I was closer with my friends than my family. And I did everything. I traveled, did all of that. And when I moved back, I had a very hard time adapting. And it was because I had a lack of that community, right? It was a lack of just being able to exchange ideas, being able to you know, I don't want to go too deep into my story, but you can tell how important community is. And so when I found Web3 at the time, I was in severe lack of community, severe lack of friendship, relationships, and all of that. And I kind of found Web3 by following artists that I followed into the space. I joined one project that I was super interested in. I watched a Discord grow from 20,000, which was gigantic at the time, to 500,000 or 250,000, I believe was like the total number. And watching that grow, watching the amount of people, and it wasn't bots, like they were real people, you know, watching that was just like so eye-opening for me. And it was just like, wow, like these people don't realize, but they're all working together. And they were probably working together way more than that, like they've ever worked with that many people before, right? And I was just so fascinated with the idea of like, in this Discord, if the mod said something, everybody would do something. Like that's how like wrapped around the finger, right? And I was just like, what if the mods just told everybody, okay, in 10 minutes, we're all gonna jump at the same time, right? Like it would have had an effect on the world. And that just like stuck with me. And so then this whole like idea of like community really became obsessive with me, where I was just like, okay, why is community so important? And then I started realizing it's important because it's going to disrupt all the markets. It's going to disrupt a lot of the way we're building businesses right now, especially if someone figures out how to galvanize and then utilize that energy of that community, right? Of that like die hard, I'll do whatever you say kind of thing. Now, I'm not trying to create, you know, robots or anything, but it's like when you have people that feel empowered, when they feel heard and seen, they'll go to the end of the earth to do whatever that they need to do to continue feeling that feeling.
Recently, I attended this small gathering in Sri Lanka for a community called Forma. And I've been in this space for 5 years, but that was one of the first times that I really felt this bond with someone. Like, because again, there's no other thing connecting us other than the community that we are here to do this. So I really agree with that part. That's amazing. So you mentioned this community thing where you really found out, because you mentioned there was a personal reason where you got involved with these communities. But then how did you navigate by taking lead in that community? Why did you decide? Because you mentioned 200,000 people. Why only Mason was the one who's like, I'm going to lead? Why was that?
Believe it or not, it wasn't that Discord. So that Discord and that project let me down because as I'm having this realization about community and I'm talking about it, I'm getting in the face of these founders and I'm saying, guys, it's all about community. Like I am a community man. Like I will literally do whatever you want. And I'm getting the door slammed. I'm getting, sorry, we don't have time. We've got bigger and better plans. We don't have time for community. We're not actually sure that's what the people want.
Why was that?
It was like mind-boggling for me. And so
why do you think was that?
I think that in 2021, 2022, people thought, oh, it's easy to generate millions of dollars off an NFT mint and then go off and build whatever it is, not realizing that the amount of time they had spent building that community to just abandon them is going to backfire so much harder. And that's exactly what happened, right? It's exactly like they built their entire brand. They built everything off the empowerment and the making people feel special. And then as soon as you minted out, you completely abandoned that and you just treated them like, you know, lesser almost, you know? So anyway, that really put a bad taste in my mouth. And that kind of like sent me off my journey. Like, where am I going to find that? Like, I want to find a project that understands the real power of community and how people like me probably don't only want to hold something. Like, I probably want to do something. Like, I kind of want to create something. I want to be, maybe I'll build a team or maybe I'll join a team, but I want to do something. I want to feel like I'm giving back. I want to contribute. I want to feel proud of what I'm creating, right? And that's just something that along my life in entertainment or IRL, like creating is always that like best reward of some, whatever creating may be, whether it's you're working with your hands, you're doing something digital, you're writing something, any sort of, I have an idea, I execute on it. That is something I've always wanted. And Web3 to me, it was like, holy shit, like these projects need so much help. They need so many ideas, and I'm sure they have a lot. Now you've got an army of people willing to help you execute, and they're experts, some of them in some of these areas. Why aren't we trying to tap into that? And so that's kind of what I set out to do. That's when I found Genuine Undead, which was a free mint, like completely free, no pre-marketing, no nothing. And I
This
found
was this was during the time when there were a lot of Freemans going around.
this is probably like the second free mint. There was like Goblin Town and then Genuine Undead. So it was like, yes, it was right around that same time. Genuine Undead actually launched in June, was a free mint, and it sat until August. Nobody knew about it. Nobody minted it. It minted out because a bunch of bot guys found it, botted it out, and then it showed up on Icy Tools, and then everybody started looking at it. So like for me, like I don't know anybody who minted it. First of all, I've never spoken to anyone who has minted it. I've spoken to a few people who are like, oh, I minted Genuine Undead. And I'm like, you did? And then I realized that they're full of shit. But no one I know actually minted it. They all got in after once it was botted out. So they picked it up for $2, $3, $4, and then so on. And then it blew up because of how galvanized the community started to take. So for me, I looked at it as the perfect opportunity for me to start contributing and start giving back. And so I had no plans to become a leader in this project. I had no plans in, trying to be the face of this project. In fact, like the way that this founder communicated his ideas and the like foundation of this art and all of this, it was completely set up so that it was supposed to be decentralized, and there was never supposed to be a face, because as soon as someone takes that throne, the weight of that throne completely can shatter it. And so for us, like we really took we took that to heart. And for me, I started realizing that I love communicating. I love getting on spaces. I love talking with one another. I love connecting community. I love having that. And this is before spaces really took off, right? This is back when 2021, 2022, we were still in Discord VCs. The majority of communications were still happening in, whether you were in an alpha server or you were in an NFT server, you were in a Discord VC, and that's where your community was communicating. And so with Genuine Undead, we started to try and take that out. And a big part of it was trying to recreate what I experienced at that first project pre-mint. Because that energy, that 250,000 people that were just like, that's all I wanted. I wanted that pre-mint experience back. Even though some people looked at it and was like, oh, I was grinding. I would never want to do that again. Maybe, if that's how you did it. But some of us actually took the opportunity to meet a bunch of people. And it's funny because I think about the people that I met then, there's still people that I interact with today. It's like people in college, right? It's like you went to college with those people and it's 20 years later, you're still having phone calls with them. And it's very similar because you went through something, right? You went through an experience. And so that's exactly what I tried to do with Genuine Undead, is like, how do we create this same kind of pre-mint hype post-mint? And that was by trying to create a culture around what this community was. For me, I had read a book at the time called The Sovereign Individual, written in 1997. Highly recommend you read this, because a lot of the talk is coming out now, but it's all about basically decentralized networks and how cryptocurrency and blockchain is going to disrupt how we organize as humans, how we socialize, how we, just operate, and how we live in our jurisdictions. And so we started the culture with that. That's where we started talking. I kid you not, I used to open up spaces and I would play the audiobook, and we would read it, we would listen to a chapter, turn it off, and then talk about it for an hour, which was like, at the time, no one's doing that, and it was like, again, I understand Web3 is like super degenerate, but Genuine Undead didn't start super degenerate. It started more from this kind of super cerebral, decentralized thing. And for me, I took that to heart. So that's when I started saying, like, okay, I can do something with this. I can build this. This is exactly what the artist and the founder wants us to do, is to go and build things. And that's been my experience, has been trying to figure out ways to empower my community without any funds, without any necessarily like in real financial incentives, because I don't have that to give. I'm a community member. But how, on my side, how do I still create that like environment where that energy, that feeling of being heard and seen is so strong that no matter what happens, you'll die for these people?
Yeah. And there are not a lot of people who would be willing to take that step. And so, shout out to you. You're doing it. You mentioned something really interesting. Don't abandon your community. In my experience, and I'm pretty sure you can relate, is that you might have seen so many projects where the founders spent so much time and effort building all these communities, but they ended up abandoning them just because they were not able to deliver the vision. I think, and I want your opinion on that. Maybe they were not looking it from the lens that you are looking at that, right? They might be thinking, okay, community isn't that valuable. We might want to build our product or whatever the promise was, and then they just abandon it. So, why do you think founders are not able to realize the value of the community? And based on the theme of this podcast, the founders that are watching right now, building in the Web3 space in different niches, what would be your advice when they think about community? How they should think about community?
So I think there's like a fundamental disconnect sometimes. There's some founders that are really good about making people feel that empowerment, making people feel seen. There's other founders that don't want any interaction with the community at all. And that's like kind of their mystique. That's the hierarchy that they've established in that community, right? Like, I'm the founder, I'm up here, you don't have access to me, I don't talk, I don't come in VC, and that's whatever it is. And there are people that can build communities with that, right? But I think ultimately the founders that are going to succeed are the ones that have the ability to communicate, have a pulse on what's happening while they're able to go out and build their product. Extra credit bonus points if you figure out a really creative way to include your community. You don't have to use your community. You don't have to necessarily provide them anything, but at least giving them a look at what that process is to what you're building, even if you're going through like a struggle or whatever, being able to provide some access to what the journey is like is really what community wants. Community just wants to be a part. They want to be heard and seen. So if you start saying, hey, I hear you, I see you as a community, I want you guys to be part of this journey with this product I'm making or whatever. That, in my opinion, is what a lot of founders miss, is that they feel like they got to keep their head down. They got to keep everything locked up because no one can see anything until it's finally done. And that's I think a misconception sometimes in this space, because you're missing a huge opportunity to engage the community.
Don't you think that if a founder has an idea of a business or a product, and from day one they involve a bunch of people, community, giving feedback on something that isn't live yet, and then their expectations as of it, right? Because if again, and I want to hear your opinion on that, community does not necessarily attract good people as well. They might attract naysayers and all these negative energy as well. So if a founder, again, I want to make it actionable. So we have established the value of community, and it's very clear that the people who want to build their product and a community together will have a higher chance of success rather than the ones that are building in silos. So now let's say if a founder has decided that I want to build a community around whatever I'm doing, how do they go about it? And how do they manage expectation? Because that's a question for me as well, right? Because that's one of the reasons that I stay away from community, is that, okay, I don't want expectations of a bunch of people before even I have built something. So how can a founder navigate that?
So I love this question because expectation is a big thing. And I think a lot of founders create way too big of expectations, and then their community basically expects that. I'm a perfect example of that. I have done way too much for some of my communities, and now they expect that from me, right? And I've had to learn that the hard way. That being said, what I think it comes down to as a founder, and when you're thinking about community, the equation comes down to opportunities, right? And I think too often we think about opportunities as financial opportunities, but opportunities are, in my opinion, more of opportunities to create joy, opportunities to create happiness, opportunities to create fun, right? Whatever that might be. And obviously different products and different things are going to have different opportunities available to them, and their communities are going to be interested in different opportunities. But becoming really good at coming up with a variety of things to keep people engaged, I think, is what is really big. And most of the time, those opportunities are free. Most of the time, those things aren't going to cost you anything. It's more just time and organization, or having someone do the time and organization of something. But what those opportunities are doing is you're giving people opportunity to be heard and seen. And that's what people want, right? Whether maybe it is a financial reward. Look, I just got heard and seen for being a holder. I'm being rewarded. Okay, you got heard and seen in a financial way. How do you get heard and seen from a social way? Maybe we do a community spotlight on some of our most talented members and what they do outside the space. Great. Opportunity to be heard and seen. Okay, maybe we do an opportunity to create a product for, one of my favorite projects right now is Bearish, that I was an advisor role for. And they have completely unlocked a side of their community's brain that I don't even think their community knew existed. They got on stream one day and they said, hey, let's just start vibe coding, right? And they got on their AI and they just started vibe coding. And within an hour, they built like 2 apps. Well, they had 100 viewers. And then they opened it up and they said, okay, we're going to start a competition. And we're going to give away this for anyone who vibe codes this, this, and this. Now, for the last 4 weeks, they're in community on a daily basis, goes on stream, vibe codes together, has built literally 40, 50 different apps together.
Oh.
And they're like learning a whole nother side. And most of these people have never coded in their life. They've never even thought about that being possible. But they provided an opportunity. They provide an opportunity to educate themselves and do that. And so for me, that is what I think the best founders are doing, are thinking about their community and the opportunities that they're providing. Now, there's also opportunities for the community to help you too. And I think those are easier to identify. Not really important here because it's like easier to find the opportunities where you can have community help you, but it's a two-way street.
Mason, if you were to give 2 or 3 minutes masterclass from 0 to 1 of building a community, what would it be? 2 or 3 minutes masterclass, 0 to 1. Because I'm thinking from a founder perspective, right? The people that are watching you, okay, Mason, you know a lot about community. You've been there for a long time, but how can I do it? I mean, one way is obviously they can seek advice or help from experts such as yourself. But if someone was to go and do it by themselves, what would that look like?
First of all, you can't, I think we're approaching it wrong. You can't just go and build a community, right? You can't just go build a community and find people and just it's not a Sims game where you go and you just go in the inventory and you just hit okay, I've got 50 community members now. It's not how it works. First, you've got to find something that's going to draw someone in. 2 people is a community. All you need is 1 person. You don't need 100 people. You don't need 1,000 people. You don't need 250,000 people. It's great if you do. It's harder if you do. But starting a community starts with that first individual and the reason why they're there. Why are they there? What drew them in? Was it art? Was it your product? Was it your mission? Was it your vision? Was it you as a person? Was it because of who you stand for? That is where you have to start. And you have to start on who is that first individual. And then from there, it grows and it grows and it grows. But I think it is very wrong. And this is also something that I feel like a lot of people are struggling is they want to build in Web3. They know that community is a fundamental part of building in Web3. And so they're like, okay, I've got this product. I've got to build a community. Not exactly the formula to build a community, right? So the product might not be the way to do that. So you've got to kind of figure out what is it going to be that first initial draw in, whether it's you, whether it is the product, whether it is, but you got to start with that 1. You don't want to go out and try and grab 30, 40, 50 people at once because you have no idea what that community, you have no idea what the moral fabric of any of it is. You know what I mean? You got to start really small and then start to grow out. And I think that's a huge thing. And especially for founders that are coming in more from a product basis, I think finding people that understand your product, understand your vision, understand why it works. And in a way you're starting to communicate with them and they almost start to finish your sentences where they almost understand it better than you. Those are the people you want in your community, first off, because those are people that get it. And the people that start to enter that community on a new places, that's who they're going to meet first. Even before they meet you, they're going to meet the person that understands it. And so you want to find people that really get it. There's a topic when it comes to community that super fans. And I don't like using that word because super fans is something I feel like comes a little later in the line. But this is kind of a pre-super fan, right? Finding that core group of people that understand the vision, understand wanting to be there. Now, take Genuine Undead and like my experience there. You had this event that happened where it minted out, shows up on Icy Tools. So now you have a bunch of NFT people going out and collecting these, and the sales are going nuts. Nobody knows where to go. There's no Discord. There's nowhere to organize communication. This is before Twitter chats and all of that. So what happened? We just started a Twitter space. So now that Twitter space is there. Boom, there's our core community. Those are people that are there because they bought the asset. They're interested. We can start there. Now, another thing about community that is incredibly important to understand is the community is fluid. It is never static. And this is something I've had to learn the hard way. And it eats me alive sometimes because there's been people that have contributed so much or I've believed in so much or have just done so much that decide at a certain point, this is no longer right for them, this community, or their time is better elsewhere, whatever it might be. And being able to understand that is not a personal thing, even though someone might say it is, it's not. And understand that the community is something that is always going to be changing, and understanding that those opportunities always kind of need to be there, as well as always kind of need to be adapting based off of who is coming into your community.
Very interesting. So if I were to summarize, if a founder is watching who's coming from a product perspective, it's not necessarily that they should go and actively build for it. It's basically they should decide what they're trying to do. That, as you said, could be a product, could be a vision, could be art, or could be something that they truly believe in or are passionate about. And then organically, it will attract other people. But there has to be a place or a channel where you're communicating it. Is that correct, right? That could be anything. And then you'll start attracting people.
I think sorry, just to cut you off, just because what you said, but I think a lot of opportunity is missed too because people focus too much of having their own community. Community itself is something that, like I said, it's fluid. We're a community right now, the two of us talking. And so I think being able to, oh man, I just lost what I was going to say,
But you actually changed my perspective in just few minutes, because I never thought, because again, just like how my mind is wired,
right.
Watching all these projects, because I'm not involved that much, I always had the view is that, okay, someone or a group of people have to come together, make plans, do efforts to get people together, and that becomes a community. But you've changed my perspective, is that
no, I
idea,
actually,
vision.
Yeah, I think products should actually take the opposite. I think products that are more product driven should be trying to come into this space and get to know the communities that are already around. Because to me, that is something that is very untapped right now. And obviously we've talked a little bit about some of our connections behind, and there's some of the builders that we're connected to that are actually really good at this. But being able to use community as product testers and being able to do that is you can save millions of dollars doing that. And there's so many communities out there. Let's take PLA, the Circle. That is such an awesome community, because if you look at the curation that he did and the people that are actually in that community, you're going to get some incredible eyes, some incredible advice, some incredible feedback for whatever you do. And so for me, if I was doing a very product, something that I didn't necessarily know, how do I create a long-standing community around this? I would be approaching communities that are already set up and already have a foundation for being in this space, wanting to learn, wanting to educate, and try to work with them, because I think that is also something that is being underutilized right now.
Very interesting. I think you've unlocked a new segment that will come to you as well, right? Because think of it in this way, Mason. There's so many founders, if they come across this, they're like, okay, I want to do that, because people pay lots of money just to get people to test their app, and now there's an avenue that you have kind of showed them exactly. So that's very interesting. All right,
take me for instance, right? And then we'll end on this. But take me for instance. I'm a part of at least 20 communities, actively, right? Just think about how many people you have access to right now.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe 10, 20,000 or more than that.
Easy.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very different way of thinking, but yeah, that's something. All right. So going back to your journey, again, you mentioned your background, you mentioned how you got into space, you mentioned you took part in this project, then you kind of took lead and then started doing things. then what was the journey after that? And I think now you are the head of communication for a new project. Do you want to share about that? Because one thing that I want to share with the listeners is that once you start putting in the work, you get rewarded, socially and even financially at some point if you bring enough value. So do take us through that journey from undead to this advisory roles, and then now what you're doing.
Yeah,
I think it
absolutely.
was.
Um, it's interesting because I think someone, it might have even been you on the other call that we had, but I think someone kind of mentioned this, but the last however many years, I've been doing a lot of social proof, right? And now that social proof is something that I'm able to kind of leverage a little bit more just because of all the time, the content, and just what I've been able to do and the experiences I've been able to kind of add to the tool belt. So with Genuine Undead, it was really interesting. Obviously, like no one was a founder, no one was on the team, but because I became such an active voice in that community, it got to a point where people were getting like really upset if I ever listed anything or anything like that. And it was just like, dude, what the hell is going on? And like, I'm not someone that comes from a lot of money, so I needed to do something. So that kind of shifted my mentality where I was like, okay, if I can't sell these assets to kind of keep, because I've literally put all my money into this, I need to figure out a way to kind of build within this system. And so that's when it kind of started where like, okay, how do we make this into something where I can build within it? Took us about a year to figure out. I got Genuine Dead, it's like the community set up with kind of like their decentralized version of how they were going to incorporate. And I went off, I set up my own company called Genuine Global, which is basically my team and my contribution to Genuine Undead. I'm building out different products and different experiences, and then, basically including the community, and I pay a small licensing fee back to that community. Through that, and through a lot of the work that it's like given me, I've obviously networked a lot, and I've been able to kind of get out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm part of probably 20 to 30 different communities actively. And so I think that has just provided a lot of opportunities to get to know people on a much deeper level. And people get to know who I am. And I think, again, going back to the social proof, I think I've proven who I am. I've proven my legitimacy and my genuineness. And so, yeah, the Good Vibes team reached out to me in January when they were first coming on the scene. They were very much trying to take this like organic founder approach to going to market. And so we talked about doing a live stream. This was way before anything with the team or anything like that. And I had just started flipping on the camera, if I'm being honest. Like I have 20 years of post-production background. I've edited real estate videos, commercials, short films, you name it. I've edited a bunch, but I've never really done anything live with like a camera. And so January was when I had flipped that camera on. I was really starting with this live stream. I'd been doing spaces for years. I love having these kind of conversations, and I think I have a way of effectively communicating. So the live stream came on, Good Vibes. That was kind of the first hit. And I was like, man, I really like doing this. Tried a bunch of live streams in between, the Good Vibes live streams. But leading up to Mint, I think we did 6 streams together. And I just really jived with that team. It was one of those things where going back to when I got into the space, being really kind of passionate about art, curation, storytelling, it felt like this team really understood that. Not to mention they have the foundation of having a award-winning animation studio that is basically like their core business. So that was very cool for me. It checked all the boxes, and it felt like all my skill sets could be applied here. And so when they reached out to me about a month ago and said, hey, we would like you to kind of join the team, it was one of those moments where I felt really good about the social proof that I've been putting in.
Yeah. When you put in the work, you reap the fruit as well. Amazing. So your role is head of comms and strategy. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, again, I think in Web2 as well, there are companies who have this role in a company. But let's talk about Web3. Why is it important for founders to have do this part themselves or have someone do it? Why is it important? Or hire someone like you or a consultant or some advisor for this specific part? Why is it important? And do you think, is it a good idea that the founder should have someone doing this, or the founder should do themselves? So just share your advice on how a founder would go about because now in the previous discussion, we have clearly established why it's important to have a community. But now, once we have a community, we need to have the communication between the founder and the community as well. So, to share your experience on that.
Yeah, 100%. So just in regards to this role, right? Like, I think one of the things that I'm learning too is like, I've never been a social media manager in my life. Social media is not my like strong suit and forte by any means. I am a strong communicator, and I do feel like whether it's spoken word or written, I am like very strong in that sense. And so I think there's a fit there. But I will say joining a team like GVC that has a very strong and very clear brand voice that has already been established is actually a really awesome learning opportunity for me, because I don't have that experience. What I do have, though, is that I do have more of how to communicate from a way that gets people really hyped up, but also how do I communicate while keeping a pulse on the community. And so I think that's why I'm such a perfect fit for them right now, is because they have done such an incredible job at figuring out their brand voice. And now I get to come in and learn how they did that, learn how to emulate that and continue that. But I also get to bring in this whole side that they aren't as strong as thinking of. It's like, okay, now we've really got to tap into like the soul of talking not only to the people in the Discord or talking outside, but our future community members that might not even know they're community members yet. You know what I mean? And how do we access that? To your original question, like how do you kind of how why is it important for founders to start to effectively communicate to their communities? I think a big thing about Web3 is we keep calling it the attention economy. That keeps coming up more and more. You hear, oh, it's the attention economy. If that's true, attention is like a wave, goes like this, right? And it's constantly going to do these dips, and you're going to have these peaks and dips. And understanding that is so like critical to how you communicate, because you don't want to be hitting people every day with something, because they'll get overwhelmed. You know what I mean? They get too many notifications and people are like, I'm out, dude. Like, I'm out. Like, I'm just trying to live my day. And so there is like a line, right? You got to find this line of how do you communicate? One of part of that is just understanding like humans, right? Understanding like how our attention works. And so being able to strategically place out announcements, being able to strategically place out opportunities, or just fund different types of communication, and being able to understand like what are the time frames, where is my community at, and why is this a good time to like communicate this now, is really important, I think, with Web3 founders. I think the biggest probably negative you would hear, this isn't really for me because I don't have the same expectation, but I do feel like this space is super harsh on projects that don't communicate. Like, I don't think you have to be daily, but if you go a month without saying something, like that's a no-no, right? And so I think that's probably the biggest thing, is trying to figure out a consistent form of communication that you can commit to. That's another thing about being a founder. What's the secret? Consistency.
Yeah, agreed. So if I were to summarize what you just shared, is that as a founder, because my question, another question along with that was that, does the founder has to handle this role himself?
Correct. So
Yeah.
on that note, no. And that's kind of what I mentioned too. There's sometimes where the founder is more this mystique person. They've got a community manager, they've got whoever communicating. That's totally fine. As long as whoever is communicating it is doing it in a way that is responsive, where the community like feels engaged. They feel that communication is happening, right? And then from the flip side, you've got to make sure that that person is communicating in a way that is getting to that reach, right? And
How can a founder figure out if how to hire for this role?
Great question. Great question. Some of the best hires you're ever going to find from this role are from your initial core people that you find. Those initial core people that come in and understand the vision and understand this, I think, is the easiest layup of a hire. Is the first people that come in, are engaged, are hungry, because those are the people that are hungry, and that's who you want. I cannot tell you how fucking hungry I was in this space, and I just kept, give me an opportunity. I could not get it, right? And so like that is who you want, because those people will literally show up every day and just try to prove that you made the best decision of your life.
That's very interesting. So if the founder is watching this and they've decided that they want to build a community, yes, they can hire someone for this specific role, which is communication, and the that individual could be from the early adopters or the early community member, because like you said, they really care about it, and they're hungry. Because I do agree with the hungry part. The people who are really hungry and are, ethical as well, they are the best people to hire, because there can be hungry crooks as well. I have come across such people as well.
I mean, you definitely have to be careful too, though. Like comms and strategy and community are two different things too. Like communicating to your community is one thing, and then communicating externally is another thing. So let's say you're going to market. Going to market strategy and communications, that might be something that you outsource. That might be something you find outside the community. But in regards to someone that is speaking on behalf of the community or speaks for the community or goes into spaces and speaks on behalf of whatever is like a representative, yeah, I think those people are solid from within.
I have two questions, right? So two follow-up questions. One is, so again, we established why community are important. We established how founders can figure out whom to delegate this role to. So there is a clear communication between the community and the project team. I have two questions. One is not related. I'll do the first one. So you mentioned that there are different mediums through which the communication can happen. There are two that you keep on bringing up again and again, which is live streams and spaces. Are there any other mediums or tools that founders can use to communication? Obviously, there's Discord, there's Twitter as well, but which ones are the most important that cannot be ignored by any project team or founder if they are building in 2025?
Man, good question. And it's funny because I feel like who you ask, they have a different answer. I think the one that you can't ignore is probably X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. I think that one's probably you must, because you need to have comms in terms of not only spaces, but the actual tweets, the actual information, the actual jump off point. And because this space does revolve around X, I think X is a must. In regards to spaces, live streams, I think that's added. I think that's for people that really want to commit to building this and really want to get the message out there and really want to start communicating what's happening, whether it's communicating the vision or just having, community building, whatever that is. I think spaces and live streams are great opportunities for that. Plus, they double as content. And as you start to communicate, you're going to realize that you need content all the time. The other avenues, obviously, there's things like Telegram, which I'm not the biggest user of. The user face is very hard for me, but I have been trying to learn a lot more about Telegram because I think it offers some interesting opportunities when it comes to sub-communities. One of the things in Discord that you can do is obviously you can token gate chats and you can make it like subdivided and all this. It gets a little messy. The interesting part about Telegram, and this is something that I've been exploring, is trying to figure out how I can utilize Telegram for some of the subgroups and some sub communities that have been growing within my communities. And how is that a better avenue of communication for some of these? Is that a better way to keep tabs on some of these things and be able to channel that information back? I don't have an answer yet, but I am actively exploring that because I keep having people reach out and saying, you really need to try Telegram for this purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I personally use Telegram a lot, and the community features is really good. I'm not sure if you have used Telegram, but on Telegram, I think that's what you were referring to, right? For example, there is this main community, and then within that chat, you can have multiple chats, and
Correct.
you can. So that's really interesting. Amazing. So now this Good Vibe Club, I assume, is an NFT project, correct?
Correct.
Are NFTs dead?
No, NFTs
No.
aren't.
Yeah. So because again, I have no exposure to this part of
Sure.
like I am mainly in DeFi and other spaces. So help me understand, and the listeners or the people that are watching this video, what's the landscape of NFTs look like? What is happening? Because again, there are blue chips projects like Pudgy Penguin, PAYC, they've established their authority, and regardless of the market condition, they will remain there. As a founder, is there still opportunity to build?
100%.
Or
100%. So the two examples you gave, unfortunately, I don't really look at them as like valid examples. One, because BAYC is like one of the things that kicked this entire thing off, right? Pudgy Penguins is a different situation because in reality, Pudgy Penguins was a rug project. Someone came in with $2 million, had another $9 million sitting on the side, and injected $11 million and created the business that you see today. So is it an NFT project? Yes. Is it the same way that most NFT projects work? No. We're not all have $2 million that we can just inject and then have another $9 million. So I think that, yes, NFTs are not dead. I think that we had a bit of a situation where the culture itself started to eat itself. And that's why we created this, like, NFTs are dead and all of this. Obviously, things got like kooky, got unsustainable, it got wild. I mean, when I first joined the space, people were telling me that they were buying Hapes for 8 ETH. And I'm like, you're 21 years old. Like, you shouldn't even have access to that amount of money at this point. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was just very surreal for me. So I always knew it wasn't going to be this way. That being said, the technology itself is still there. It still has such a value. I think digital identity is something that we haven't even really begun to see take shape yet. Going back to kind of the sovereign individual, and we start to think about the way that the world is starting to shape up. Look at like the trade wars and things that are going on. What we're going to start to see is that people are going to start leaning more into their digital communities and leaning more into what their digital communities can provide them versus what their governments can provide them. And so we're going to see more and more digital adoption because the more and more value and the benefits are going to be coming to the people that are online organizing and realizing what the actual opportunities are versus the people that are just sitting around waiting for their government to tell them what's happening. So to me, I think digital identity is going to continue to become more and more prominent, which means people are going to need ways to express themselves. I think the blockchain, again, is a ledger, so you can see the history of everything. Will all NFTs be around? No. Personally, I've only bought NFTs when I have either liked the founder and liked the project because I believe and I want to support them, or I actually like the art, like for some reason. I don't like the art on most NFTs. I'll be really frank with you. And it sucks because I hold a lot of NFTs and most people are like, wait, I don't like it. There's very few projects that I feel like have some sort of artistic grip on me or has somehow innovated in an artistic way. And that's why I'm really into them. And those are few and far between. I think the majority of NFTs are experimenting with the tech and with what you can do with communities. And so, yeah, I don't think a lot of them will last in regards to what they are now, especially considering that community is not stagnant, it's fluid. But do I think NFTs are dead? In no way. I think digital identity continues. I think there's definitely going to be winners. There's definitely going to be ways for founders to continue to come in this space and build. I mean, Good Vibes Club is a perfect example. Yes, they might have started that art process 3 years ago, but they just came into that space 2025 and just sold out an NFT collection and now is one of the major talks of the town at the moment.
Amazing. So the summary is no, the NFTs are still there. Like just you said, the technology is really unique and valuable. We might see it morph into a different form. Just one of the things that you mentioned is digital identities. But still, for founders who are new to the space or have been in the space, they can still take the leap and build in this space. So just before we wrap up, you are a part of the Undead community, Genuine Undead community, because there's another one as well, which we talk about briefly in our call. And then you are the communication and strategy for Good Vibe Club. Other than that, do you yourself, because again, just talking to you for the past 50 minutes, I've realized the amount of knowledge and exposure and the experience that you've collected over the past, I think, 4 or 5 years in Web3 space can be very valuable if it's packaged and shared with other founders. So do you consult or advise other founders as well? If that is something, do you offer? And if the founders are watching, can they come to you for advice and help?
100%. I did this for the first time this year with Bearish, which was the project that launched on Abstract. They're one of the top projects on there. And I joined as an advisory for that exact purpose. Basically, they just wanted me on board because of all the experience I had. And it was great because I think there's a lot of things that I was able to kind of contribute to that helped us, especially going to market. afterwards, like I've been just a lot busy, so my advisory role has been less. But absolutely, and it's something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and then I can clearly see you're very passionate about the community because that's why I think the title would be it's a masterclass on building communities. All right, so any final advice for founders watching uh, for community, go-to-market strategy? One more thing was that, is there a right time to launch? There are some people who hold back their mint or stuff like that. So any final advice on founders who are in a similar situation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in terms of advice, in terms of timing, I don't know. Timing is always difficult. There's never really a right time. There's just always like when there is a time, you got to figure out the right way to do it. Right. I think my advice to founders would be when you're trying to put your vision, when you're trying to put your product out there, it's not so much getting to know the actual specifics of the product, what it looks like or whatever. Sometimes it's about getting to know who you are and why you're making that product, which becomes the main reason why people want to see that succeed. And so that is like one of the reasons why I'm so big on communities, because we want to have people using our product, but who are the people using our product?
Exactly. Right? I did take a note where you mentioned discover yourself and figure out what your skills are or what is your ikigai, if you're familiar with the concept. So amazing. So I mean, Mason, this was very informative for me because you might see I'm asking the questions that I have as a founder.
100%.
So thank you so much for that. All right. Thank you, Mason, for coming on today. With that, we'll wrap up the episode. I hope you found this conversation as insightful and inspiring as I did. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next episode.